tonight we do not begin in a warm bed. Tonight, you're standing knee-deep in the icy, grey-green surf of a Baltic morning, roughly 5,000 years ago. The dawn sky is the color of a bruised mussel shell, and a wind smelling of pine, wet stone, and something profoundly ancient slices through your animal skins. You are not here for a pleasant swim. You are here because the storm that raged last night was not a destroyer, but a deliverman. As the waves recede with a hiss, your eyes scan the pebbled slurry. And there it is. A flash, not of light reflected, but of light captured, a golden, honeyed lump the size of your thumb, nestled in the dark gravel. You bend, numb fingers closing around something warm to the touch, a tiny sun held in your palm. This is amber. And this moment, repeated countless times on this desolate, endless coast, is the first link in a chain of silence that will stretch for millennia, a wordless commerce that will shape empires. The reality check? You're probably going to get dysentery from the water here long before you get rich, but let's focus on the shiny bit. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are not alone on this beach. You are a member of a coastal people, let's call them the gatherers. Your world is defined by the forest at your back and this relentless sea before you. Your knowledge is local, intimate. You know which birds' calls signal a change in weather, which roots can dull a toothache, and that this sunstone washes up most abundantly after a fierce northwestern gale. To you, it is beautiful, perhaps powerful, but it is also a part of the landscape, as common as a particularly interesting seashell. At least, it is common here. But you have heard whispers from the interior, from the people of the forest and the river valleys. Traders with faces lean from long journeys bring tales of distant lands where this golden resin is unknown, where it is desired with a fervor that borders on the mystical. They speak in terms of exchange that make your head spin, a handful of this pretty stone for a fine, flint-tipped spear, a larger, clear piece for a copper blade that glints like nothing you've ever seen. The concept is almost absurd. You just have to pick it up. A widely accepted historical fact is that the Baltic coast contained, and still contains, the world's largest single source of amber, a bounty formed from the fossilized resin of ancient coniferous forests that covered the region some 44 million years ago. That's a lot of prehistoric tree sap. So, you gather. It becomes a seasonal ritual, like harvesting berries or netting salmon. You patrol the high tide line after storms, your eyes trained to spot that distinctive warm glow against the cold, dark sand. You develop a keen sense of quality. The cloudy, whitish pieces are of little interest. The prize is the clear, golden honey color, or the rare pieces that have captured a perfect, tiny feather or the delicate wing of a gnat, a moment from an ancient world, frozen in a jewel. You likely don't know it's a fossil, of course. To you, it might be the tears of a goddess, or solidified sunlight. You store your season's haul in a leather pouch, feeling its weight. It is a weight of potential. But how do you turn potential into a copper axe? You can't just walk 1,000 miles into the unknown, hoping to bump into someone who wants your pretty rocks. And those forest-dwelling traders from the south? They are cautious, their language is a confusing babble, their intentions always veiled. The path of least resistance, the one that emerges from the fog of prehistory, is one of sublime simplicity. It requires no shade language, no treaties, no complex bartering. It requires only mutual greed and a profound, mutual distrust. It is called the silent trade. Imagine the arrangement. You, the coastal gatherer, know a clearing a day's walk inland, a neutral ground. You travel there with a selection of your amber, your heart thumping a little faster than usual. You are not a warrior, this is a different kind of courage. At the clearing's edge, you lay out your wares on a prominent, flat rock or a piece of bark. A single, beautiful piece in the center, a few smaller ones around it. You then retreat. You vanish completely into the dense thicket of spruce and pine, but you do not leave. You wait, perfectly still, for hours. You listen. Eventually, you hear them. The rustle is not of animals. Figures emerge from the opposite tree line. They are different from you, their clothing, their bearing. They are the middlemen, the first link in the chain moving south. They approach your display cautiously, eyes scanning the tree line where you hide. They examine your amber, weighing it in their hands, holding pieces up to the filtered light. Then, they place beside your pile what they deem a fair exchange. It might be that coveted flint blade, a bundle of superior animal furs, or a small, heavy ingot of raw copper. Then, they too retreat, melting back into the forest. This is the moment of truth. You emerge. You inspect their offering. Is it sufficient? Is it worth it? If you are satisfied, you take their goods and disappear, leaving the amber for them to collect. The deal is done. If you are not satisfied, you do not touch their offering. You simply retreat back into hiding. They will return, see their goods untouched, and perhaps add to them. This Hagarian absence continues until either an agreement is reached in total silence, or one party gives up and leaves, taking their possessions with them. No words are ever spoken. No hands are ever shaken. No names are ever known. It is commerce at its most pure and most tense. And it worked. For thousands of years, it worked. Historians still argue whether this practice was born from profound cultural taboo, a simple lack of a common language, or a brilliant, mutual understanding that the most profitable relationships are the ones where you never have to look the other guy in the eye. You are back at the clearing, the memory of that first successful exchange a quiet hum in your veins. The copper blade you acquired is a marvel, but it's the process itself that has changed you. You are no longer just a person who picks up pretty stones. You are now a participant in a system, a node in a silent, spreading network. The protocol is everything. You know the drill. Arrive at the agreed-upon moon phase, lay out your goods with a certain ceremonial care. Not too much, lest you look desperate, not too little, lest you insult their journey, and retreat to a specific moss-covered fallen log you've come to think of as your own. The waiting is the hardest part. It's not just waiting for them to appear, it's the agonizing silence after they've laid down their offer and left. Your ears strain for the snap of a twig that means they're still watching, testing you. To move too soon is a fatal breach of etiquette. The silence is the contract. Today's offering is good. You've brought 3 prime pieces, a large, teardrop-shaped lump of clear honey amber, a smaller piece with a stunning, milky white inclusion swirling like a cloud, and a third that holds a perfectly preserved ant, its form eternal in its golden tomb. You arrange them on the broad, lichen-spotted rock that serves as your altar to trade. You step back, your eyes sweeping the opposing tree line one last time, and then you fade into your hiding spot. The forest breathes around you. A woodpecker drills in the distance. Time stretches. They come. 2 of them this time. Their movements are economical, their eyes missing nothing. They approach the rock, and you see the taller one's eyebrows raise ever so slightly at the sight of the ant in amber. They handle the pieces, not with reverence, but with the appraising expertise of a jeweler. They converse in low, guttural murmurs you cannot understand, a reminder of the vast gulf the silent trade exists to bridge. Then, the taller one pulls a bundle from his pack. He unwraps it slowly, revealing not flint or copper, but a necklace. It's made of animal teeth, bear, perhaps, and polished shells from some southern sea, but spaced between them are beads of a vibrant, blue-green stone you have never seen. It is stunningly foreign. He lays it carefully beside your amber. His companion adds 2 fine otter pelts, dark and sleek. They share a look, a nod, and retreat as silently as they came. Your heart hammers. The necklace is objectively more beautiful, more complex, than anything your people craft. It speaks of a world of different resources, different aesthetics. But beauty doesn't skin a deer or cut wood. The otter pelts are practical, valuable. Is this enough for your 3 pieces, one of which is a true rarity? The silent trade forces a brutal, internal calculus. There is no room for emotional pleading, for pointing out the weeks of storm watching it took to find that ant. The goods on the rock are the entire argument. You must decide if the equation balances in your mind. You wait the requisite time, the silence now a palpable thing, thick as the forest mist. You finally emerge, your footsteps loud in your own ears. You walk to the rock. You pick up the necklace. The blue-green stones are cool, smooth. Turquoise, though you have no name for it. It has traveled an unimaginable distance to be here, in this damp clearing, offered for a piece of your coastline. This is the moment where the system proves its resilience. If you take the necklace and the pelts, the deal is sealed. They will return to find the amber gone and their goods taken. Trust, or its facsimile, is confirmed. If you leave it all, they will know to improve their offer or walk away. There is no room for ambiguity, no take-backses. You make your decision. You slip the necklace over your head. The strange, cool stones feel heavy against your chest, a weight of new connections. You gather the otter pelts. Without a backward glance at the amber now belonging to others, you turn and walk back into the trees on your side of the clearing. The transaction is complete. Not a word has been spoken, yet a complex transfer of value, desire, and cultural artifact has just occurred. You walk home, the alien necklace a tangible proof of a truth you're beginning to grasp. Your local treasure is not local in its value. It is a key that unlocks the wealth of the world, provided you are willing to abide by the rules of silence. A lesser-known, slightly amusing historical detail is that this system was so effective and so widespread, observed from the Baltic to West Africa to the Arctic, that ancient Greek historians like Herodotus wrote about it with a kind of bewildered awe, describing it more like a bizarre cultural ritual than high-stakes economics. They just couldn't fathom doing business without a good argument. The necklace of foreign stones feels alien against your skin, a cool, smooth mystery. But back in your settlement, by the fire's familiar glow, the amber you kept for yourself reveals its true nature to your people. It isn't just a trade good. It is alive with power. Your elder, a woman with eyes like river stones, takes the piece you offer her, a small, clouded lump, and holds it close to the flames. To your astonishment, a faint, sweet, piney scent whispers from it. "The breath of the world tree," she murmurs. "This is magic." When rubbed vigorously against wool, the amber will snatch up dry leaves and feather down, an invisible force, a captive spirit showing its strength. This isn't static rock. It holds the sun's warmth long after the stone hearth has cooled. It captures the essence of the forest that birthed it. Your people's beliefs weave a complex tapestry around the sunstone. It is the tears of the sun goddess, shed as she sinks into the sea each evening, solidified and washed ashore as a gift to her children. It is the physical form of luck, of protection. A piece buried at the corner post of a new home will guard the family within. A newborn will have a tiny, polished bead tied to its cradle to ward off unseen spirits that cause sickness. But the beliefs are also intensely practical, verging on the bizarre to our modern senses. Crushed amber is mixed into animal fat to create salves for wounds, believed to staunch bleeding and drive out infection. A powder of it might be ingested to cure a stomachache or a sore throat. The logic is sympathetic. It is warm, golden, alive with spirit. It must impart vitality. And then there are the inclusions. The piece with the ant inside is not merely a curiosity. It is a profound mystery, a relic of a time outside of time. How did the creature get inside the stone? The prevailing theory among your people might be that it is a messenger, a guide from the spirit world frozen at the moment of its journey. Perhaps ants, in their great underground cities, know secrets of the earth that the amber has stolen and preserved. A piece with a perfect fly or a spider's leg is a powerful talisman for hunters, a symbol of being in the right place to capture your prey. It is a widely accepted historical fact that amber, due to its electrostatic properties, that trick of picking up feathers, which we now call static electricity, its warmth, and its captivating inclusions, was universally attributed magical and medicinal powers across ancient Europe. The Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder would later catalogue dozens of these amber-based remedies with deadpan seriousness, some more credible than others. But the spiritual journey of your amber is just beginning. You know, through the silent trade, that it travels south. What you cannot imagine are the belief systems it is about to enter. Far beyond your forests, in sun-baked lands bordering a great inland sea, civilizations are rising that worship gods of the sun, of the underworld, of rebirth. To them, your northern amber arrives as a substance of myth made real. It is electron to the Greeks, a name tied to their word for the sun, electa. They believe it is the hardened rays of the setting sun, congealed in the northern oceans. For cultures obsessed with the cycle of life, death, and the afterlife, a substance that captures life, a mosquito, a leaf, and holds it in perfect, golden stasis is nothing short of miraculous. It becomes a symbol of eternal life, a suitable offering to gods and a protective amulet for the dead on their journey. Historians still argue whether the initial immense value placed on amber by Mediterranean cultures was driven more by its perceived magical properties or by its sheer, breathtaking beauty and rarity as a luxury material. Was it a holy substance first, and a status symbol second, or was it the other way around? The answer is probably both, inseparably fused. The high priest in a temple might value it for its divine connection, while the wealthy merchant's wife craves it for the dazzling necklace it makes, a necklace that also, conveniently, proclaims her health and her piety. Your simple, gathered stone becomes a multivocal symbol of solar power, of magical preservation, of health, of obscene wealth, and of connections to a distant, almost mythical north. The silent trade moves physical objects, but it cannot control the storm of meanings that gather around them like mist. The amber leaves your hands as a valuable curiosity, a tool for barter. It will arrive at its destination as something approaching a fragment of divinity. And all of that spiritual weight gets factored, silently, into the price. Wearing the foreign necklace marks you, subtly, as different. You've successfully navigated the silence. You've brought back otter pelts and a mystery. Others in your coastal clan now look to you when talk turns to the clearing and the men from the forest. You have become, almost by accident, a specialist. And specialization, as it turns out, is the gateway to power. You start making the journey more regularly, not just after major storms, but to maintain the relationship. You learn to read the signs. A particular arrangement of stones left by the middlemen means, we will return at the next full moon. A knot tied in a specific way on a branch left at the site signals a desire for larger quantities. The silent trade develops its own grammar, just not an auditory one. You are evolving from a gatherer into a coordinator. You begin to organize others. You convince a few skilled hunters that their time is better spent guarding the approaches to the clearing during a trade than stalking an elk that week, paid in a share of the goods you bring back. You have a quiet talk with the best flint knapper in the settlement. His exquisitely crafted blades and arrowheads are not for hunting anymore, but become part of the trade package you offer up the chain, a way to sweeten the deal for the middlemen and secure better returns. You are no longer just trading amber. You are trading in influence, in security, in a burgeoning portfolio of southern goods. Your people, once simply living on the Amber Coast, are becoming of it in a new way. The coastline is no longer just a source of food and occasional trinkets, it is a resource to be managed. You find yourselves discussing, in hushed tones around winter fires, the need to subtly discourage rival gatherers from other clans from knowing about your clearing, your contacts. The concept of a trade secret is born, not as a written law, but as a fiercely guarded understanding. The clan begins to see itself not just as a family, but as a franchise. The silent trade demanded neutrality, but it breeds a quiet, possessive territoriality. A widely accepted historical fact is that by the late Neolithic and into the Bronze Age, distinct coastal cultures like the one you're part of began to show signs of increased social stratification and wealth accumulation directly linked to their control of amber sources. Their burial sites start to look different, more grave goods, including those southern imports, than their inland neighbors. This is the birth of the middleman as a social class. You are one of them now. You don't gather all the amber yourself. You receive it from your kin, taking a percentage for facilitating the dangerous, tense exchange. You become the buffer, the translator of value between two worlds that must never truly meet. Your profit is in the gap, the difference between what your clansman is happy to receive for his handful of raw amber and what you can pry from the forest traders for that same handful, now presented with ceremony and flanked by superior local flint tools. It's a markup built on knowledge, on risk, and on the enforcement of silence. The goods flowing back to your settlement change its character. Copper, once a miraculous rarity, becomes more common. The smith, a new specialist you now support, experiments with it, alloying it with tin brought from even further south to create the revolutionary metal, bronze. Your warriors, your guards, now carry bronze-tipped spears. Their prestige, and by extension yours, is amplified. Your home post holds decorative shells and strange stones. The women wear beads of materials unknown in your northern world. Your settlement grows a little larger, its palisade a little stronger. You are wealthier, more connected, and more paranoid than ever before. Because now you have something tangible to lose. The silent trade was safe because you had little to steal but the amber on the rock. Now, your entire village is a treasure chest built on that silent foundation. You must protect the source, the root, and the secret of the clearing with a new intensity. The trade is still silent, but the politics around it are getting louder. The forest traders who meet you in the clearing are not the end of the line. They are a link, just as you are. When they take your amber and your flint blades and vanish back into the green gloom, they do not go home to admire their haul. They turn south, following paths you have never seen. You try to imagine their journey, piecing it together from fragments of information glimpsed in the goods they bring. The turquoise in your necklace spoke of mountains and deserts. The seashells spoke of a different, warmer ocean. The path between your clearing and those distant places is not a road, it is a rumor made solid by countless footprints. These are not mere trails for hunters. They are arteries of commerce, worn deep by generations of feet, both human and animal. They follow ridgelines for visibility, scout treacherous marshes, ford rivers at shallow, stony points known only to the initiated. They are the amber roads. And they are not one road, but a branching, capillary-like network, shifting with the seasons, with tribal alliances, with danger. The middleman you trade with knows only his segment, from your clearing to the next major river valley, perhaps. There, he will engage in another silent trade, or perhaps a noisy one with people whose language he has half learned, passing the amber to a new set of handlers. It moves south like a baton in a relay race run over centuries. The sheer logistical reality of this trade is staggering. Think of the value-to-weight ratio. Amber is light, which is one of its great advantages as a luxury good. A single pouch can hold a fortune. But it is also fragile. It cannot be tossed in a sack with metal tools. It needs careful packing, likely in raw wool or moss, carried in leather satchels that are handled with care. The men who carry it walk for weeks, maybe months. They navigate by stars and landmarks, carrying their own food, defending themselves against beasts and, increasingly, against other humans who have heard of the sunstone and would rather steal it than trade for it. This is not a casual side hustle. It is a profession of high risk and potential reward. As the amber moves, its character changes. By the time it reaches the great river valleys of Central Europe, it is no longer a raw lump from your beach. It has been pre-processed. Along the route, at certain nodes, there are specialists who do nothing but work the amber. They are the polishers, the drillers, the carvers. Using bow drills and abrasives of sand and leather, they transform the rough nodules into standardized, desirable objects. Beads, of course, spherical, cylindrical, disc-shaped. Buttons. Spindle whorls for weaving. Amulets carved into simple shapes, axes, moons, animals. A widely accepted historical fact is that these workshops, often located hundreds of miles from the source, created a value-added product. A standardized bead was easier to price, easier to trade in bulk, and more desirable to the end consumer than a raw nugget. Your local treasure is being refined, literally and figuratively, for a continental market. You, back on the coast, know none of these details. You know the forest, the clearing, the silence. But the network your tiny trade supports is vast and humming with activity. It connects your lonely, windswept beach to alpine passes, to massive river settlements on the Danube, to communities living on piles and lakes. It requires a shared, unspoken understanding of value across cultures that have nothing else in common. It requires safe passages, negotiated not with treaties but with repeated, successful transactions. It is the Internet of the Neolithic and Bronze Age, a slow, physical web transmitting data in the form of desire and luxury. Historians still argue whether these routes were formal, recognized roads maintained by chieftains, or simply the emergent pattern of countless individual journeys, a path of least economic resistance worn into the landscape by greed. The truth likely lies in between. Certain key segments, like mountain passes or river crossings, would have been controlled and taxed by local powers, while the vast stretches of forest between them remained the domain of the lone, wary middleman, moving through the trees like a ghost, a pouch of golden sunlight his only cargo. The bronze-tipped spear in your guard's hand is more than a weapon, it is a receipt. It is the physical proof of your amber's translated value, a value that has just skyrocketed. The arrival of the Bronze Age across Europe isn't just a change in material, it's a systemic shock to every network, including yours. Bronze is an alloy, copper and tin, and those metals almost never come from the same place. Tin is rare, elusive. The trade networks to acquire it are long, secretive, and incredibly lucrative. Suddenly, the continent is crisscrossed with chains of desire, for amber, for copper, for tin, for the finished bronze objects themselves. Your humble sunstone is now a premier currency in this new metallic economy. The demand from the south becomes insatiable. It's no longer just about pretty beads for spiritual leaders or necklaces for chieftains' wives. Bronze working centers, springing up in strategic locations along the great rivers, need a steady flow of high-status goods to pay for their raw materials and to reward their patrons. Amber, perfectly suited for this, becomes a strategic resource. The middlemen from the forest now bring goods that make your head spin, not just a few bronze trinkets, but ingots of the raw metal itself, ready for your smith to melt and cast. They bring swords, actual, long, slashing swords of gleaming bronze, objects of terrifying beauty and power. The value of a single pouch of good, Clear amber has just multiplied tenfold. But with higher value comes higher danger. The clearing feels different now. The tension in the silence is sharper, metallic. The men who come are harder, better armed. They are no longer just traders. They are envoys of powerful chiefdoms far to the south, chiefdoms whose warriors are clad in bronze scale armor and who ride in chariots. They treat the silent trade with a new, impatient formality. Their offers are extravagant, but their demeanor suggests the negotiation has less flexibility. The unspoken threat hangs in the air. If the silent trade fails, other, louder methods might be employed. Your role as the coastal middleman is now one of genuine geopolitical significance. A bad deal, a misinterpretation of the silent protocol, could bring not just a failed exchange, but retaliation. Your settlement changes in response. The palisade is reinforced. Lookout posts are built along the coast, not just for gathering amber after storms, but for watching for strange boats. The idea of our coast solidifies into something resembling a border. You begin to actively manage the resource. There's talk of only gathering amber at certain times, of hiding particularly rich stretches of beach, of creating decoy clearings to mislead potential rivals or interceptors. You are learning the principles of monopolistic control. A lesser-known, surprising detail from this era is the discovery of vast amber hoards buried far from the coast, in places like modern-day Denmark and northern Germany. These weren't traders' stashes lost on the journey. They were deliberate, ritual deposits, perhaps offerings to gods to ensure the flow of bronze, or the wealth of a chief buried to display his connection to the cosmic trade network. Your amber was now important enough to be given back to the earth, a sacrifice to maintain the system that brought it forth. The complexity is breathtaking. A single bronze axe head found in a Baltic chief's grave represents a chain of silence and noise stretching thousands of miles. Your silent gathering, your silent trade with the forest middlemen, their journey south, the noisy markets of the Danube where amber bought tin, the perilous voyage of that tin from Cornwall or the Urge Mountains to a bronze smith, the smith's craft, and then the journey back north, perhaps as payment for more amber. It's a closed loop of desire, with your coastline as the irreplaceable generator. Historians still argue whether the amber trade drove the development of social complexity and warrior elites in Northern Europe, or whether emerging elites simply seized control of the pre-existing trade to fuel their rise. Did chiefs become powerful because they controlled the amber, or did they control the amber because they were already powerful? It's the ancient equivalent of asking which came first, the warlord or the supply chain. In your world, standing in the clearing with a bronze sword laid before you, the distinction ceases to matter. The power and the amber are now the same thing. Let's follow a single bead. Not the one with the ant, that's too special, too likely to be kept close. Let's follow a simpler one, a polished honeygold sphere about the size of a blueberry, drilled neatly through its center. It left your coast in a pouch with 50 others like it. It passed through the silent clearing, was carried along forest paths, was traded on the banks of a great river for a lump of tin. It traveled further, changing hands in markets where language was shouted, not withheld. It was sorted, restrung, combined with beads of glass, of faience, of rare stones. Its journey took years, maybe a generation. And it ends here, in the dripping, sunless silence of a tomb. But this is not a northern chieftain's barrow. The air smells of dry limestone and myrrh, not damp peat. The walls are cut stone, covered in vivid, strange paintings of bowed-headed gods and sailing boats. The bead is part of a necklace, placed around the neck of a man who was not a king, but a prince, or a high priest, or a governor. This is a tomb in Mycenaean Greece, or perhaps even in the palace complex of Knossos on Crete. The man was laid to rest with a gold death mask on his face, bronze weapons by his side, and a single strand of amber beads among the piles of wealth. How did it get here? through a network so long, so tenuous, that its very presence in this Mediterranean tomb is a miracle of persistence. The contrast is jarring. On one end, you, shivering on a foggy beach, picking it out of the seaweed. On this end, a masterpiece of Bronze Age engineering and art, a tomb built for a man who ruled a sun-drenched kingdom of frescoes and olive groves. The amber bead is a diplomat from the land of perpetual twilight, a tiny, captured sun from the north paying homage to the solar deities of the south. Its value here is incalculable, precisely because of the insane distance it has traveled. It speaks of connections, of a lord whose reach and influence were literally global, stretching to the very edges of the known world to acquire the most exotic of materials. This is the final stage of the transformation. On the coast, it was a commodity. On the trade routes, it was a currency. Here, in the heart of a palatial civilization, it is a symbol. A symbol of power, of esoteric knowledge, of divine favor. The Mycenaeans and Minoans were master traders, their ships plying the Mediterranean from Egypt to Sicily. They understood value, and they understood propaganda. Wearing amber, or being buried with it, was a flex of the highest order. It said, "My influence is so vast, I can command treasures from the land where the sun sleeps." It was the Bronze Age equivalent of having a piece of the moon rock on your desk. A widely accepted historical fact is the discovery of thousands of Baltic amber beads in Mycenaean shaft graves and tholos tombs, particularly at sites like Karkovatos and the famous grave circles at Mycenae. Chemical analysis, specifically infrared spectroscopy, has definitively linked this ancient amber to the Baltic region, confirming the epic scale of this trade. Your little bead is evidence not of a random, one-off adventure, but of a sustained, systematic, and highly organized commercial link between the seemingly disparate worlds of the Baltic and the Aegean. This wasn't trickle-down trinkets. This was targeted import of a prestige material for the elite. Imagine the stories woven around that bead in the warm, perfumed halls of the palace before it was entombed. The southerners had no idea about silent clearings or stormy beaches. They likely mythologized its origin. Perhaps it was from the Hyperboreans, a mythical people of the far north who lived in perpetual bliss and sent sacred offerings to Apollo. Perhaps it was the tears of the sisters of Phaeton, who mourned so hard for their brother who crashed the sun chariot that their tears, falling into the northern river Eridanus, turned to amber. The reality, a cold, wet coast where people communicated through tense retreats, would have been far less glamorous, and probably less believable. Historians still argue whether this amber reached the Mediterranean via a single, overland amber road down through Poland and the Alps, or via a complex mixed-media route involving river systems and daring coastal sea voyages across the treacherous Bay of Biscay and through the Straits of Gibraltar. The bead itself doesn't care. It rests in the dark, a silent witness to both the mundanity of commerce and the heights of human aspiration it could fuel. Let's do some math. It's crude, speculative, but illuminating. Take that single bead from the Mycenaean tomb. On your beach, it was one of hundreds found in a season. Its raw material cost was essentially the caloric expenditure of you bending over to pick it up, plus your share of the clan's storm-watching and guarding. Minimal. At the clearing, traded to the forest middlemen, its value might be set as a fraction of a bronze razor or a fine comb. Let's call it the equivalent of a day's skilled labor. Now, follow it. Each hand it passes through takes a cut. The middleman who risks the forest journey. The river valley polisher who drills it. The long-distance trader who carries it across the alpine passes, paying tolls in kind to local chieftains for safe passage. The Mycenaean merchant sailor who buys it in an Adriatic or Italian port. The palace quartermaster who selects it for the prince's regalia. By the time it is strung and placed around the neck of a sleeping prince, its value has been multiplied not by tens, but by hundreds, perhaps thousands. The markup is astronomical. It is the premium paid for distance, for risk, for the sheer, breathtaking narrative of its journey. It is the original because it's from their luxury tax. This profit margin is the engine of the entire, silent system. It's what makes the forest middleman risk bandits and wolves. It's what makes the alpine guide memorize treacherous passes. It's what makes the Mycenaean captain brave the open sea. And it all hinges on maintaining the mystery, the exclusivity. If amber became common, if the source was suddenly flooded with material, the bottom falls out of the market. So, every link in the chain has a vested interest in keeping the flow steady, controlled, and, above all, perceived as difficult. The silence of the initial trade is just the first layer of obfuscation. A haze of myth and intentional vagary surrounds the entire commodity as it moves south. Think of the tales the Mycenaean merchant might tell his royal buyer. He probably didn't say, "I got this from a guy in a clearing who got it from a guy on a beach." No. He'd speak of perilous journeys to the edge of the world, of dealing with pharaoh-like people who communicated only through signs, of acquiring the hardened tears of the sun from the very shores where the day ends. The story adds value. By the time you, the original gatherer, are part of the story, you've been transformed from a practical, cold wet person into a mythical guardian of a celestial resource. A lesser-known, slightly amusing detail is that this profit-driven obfuscation was so successful that for centuries, even the learned Romans who came later had only the foggiest idea where amber truly came from. They knew it was from the north, from somewhere near the Amber Islands, but the precise location of the Baltic coast remained shrouded in merchant legend and deliberate misinformation. It was good for business. This system creates strange bedfellows. Your coastal clan's interest and the distant Mycenaean prince's interest are, in a twisted way, aligned. You both want the trade to continue, you both want the amber to remain rare and prestigious, and you both want the routes protected, even if you have no idea what the other end of the route looks like. It's a codependence spanning a continent. Your local vigilance in guarding your beach directly supports the geopolitical prestige of a palace complex 1,500 miles away. His demand for status symbols directly funds the bronze weapons that secure your settlement. The silent trade has blossomed into a full-blown, transnational economy of myth and metal. Historians still argue whether this long-distance trade was primarily a prestige economy funneling luxuries to elites to bolster their power, or if it had a more substantive impact on the broader economies of Europe, stimulating craft specialization, resource extraction, and even early forms of debt and finance. Was it the glittering tip of a much larger, mundane iceberg of barter in food, wool, and salt? The amber bead, in its stunning journey, argues for the former. But the flint blades, the otter pelts, the bronze ingots moving in the other direction suggest a deeper, more practical exchange was happening alongside the trade in myth. The two were inseparable. The glamour financed the grit, and the grit made the glamour possible. The bronze weapons your guards now carry are not just for show. They are the teeth of a new, quiet policy, protectionism. The clearing's silence was once about ritual and mutual misunderstanding. Now, it's about security. You've become paranoid, and for good reason. Whispers travel the network, even if goods move in silence. Stories of rich coastal settlements, of warehouses, simple, hidden pits, really, full of raw amber, of southern bronze glittering in northern longhouses. Your success is your biggest vulnerability. So, you guard the secret. The knowledge of the best gathering beaches is now clan restricted, passed only to trusted kin. You create decoys. You might accidentally leave a poor quality, cloudy piece of amber far from your actual territory, hoping any interloper will find it and think that's all there is. You spread disinformation through the limited channels you have. To the forest middlemen, you might imply, through a poorer than usual offering, that the storms have been unproductive, that the sun goddess is withholding her tears. Scarcity, even artificial, maintains the price. You are learning the dark arts of market manipulation, millennia before the first stock exchange. The clearing itself becomes a fortress of custom. The protocols stiffen. Only certain people from your clan are allowed to go, those who have proven their calm, their discretion. The waiting periods are enforced with religious rigidity. A stranger attempting to approach the clearing during a trade would be intercepted by your hidden guards long before they saw the rock. This is no longer just a neutral meeting ground. It is a sanctioned port of entry in a tightly controlled border zone. The trade is still silent, but the perimeter around it is increasingly noisy with the implied threat of violence. A widely accepted historical fact is that archaeological evidence from this period shows a marked increase in fortified settlements along the likely amber collection zones of the Baltic coast, and a proliferation of weapons in burials. People weren't just getting richer, they were preparing to defend that wealth. But the greatest threat might not be from outside. It could come from within. What if a member of your own clan, dissatisfied with their share, decides to cut their own deal? What if they try to approach the forest middlemen at a different location, breaking the monopoly? The social fabric has to tighten to prevent this. Loyalty is rewarded extravagantly, with the best southern goods, with status. Betrayal of the amber secret becomes the ultimate crime, punishable by exile or death. The clan's identity crystallizes around its role as the guardian of the golden resource. Your origin stories start to emphasize your unique, divine right to the coast. You are not just living there, you are chosen to be its stewards. This is the birth of a mercantile theocracy. The pressure is immense. You are living on a gold mine, but you can't dig it up and spend it all at once. You have to meter it out, season by season, to keep the southerners hungry and the price high. You have to balance the immediate desire for more bronze, more finery, with the long-term need to keep the source mysterious and desirable. You are a central banker for a currency of fossilized resin, trying to prevent inflation across a continent. Historians still argue whether this level of control was exerted by a single, powerful chieftain, or by a council of elders and trade specialists, a proto-corporate board. Was it top-down rule, or a collective agreement among stakeholders? The silent trade doesn't leave meeting minutes. But the results are clear in the archaeological record. For centuries, the flow of amber remained steady, controlled, and incredibly profitable for the gatekeepers of the coast. They weren't just lucky. They were shrewd, secretive, and fiercely protective of their sunny, silent fortune. Silence, like any system, has a breaking point. You've known this in your gut, felt it in the increasingly tense retreats from the clearing. The protocol is a delicate bubble, and one day, it pops. It doesn't happen in your time, but the story is passed down as a warning, a ghost story for traders. Imagine the scene: a coastal delegation, perhaps from a rival clan that has grown envious of your success, arrives at a known trading ground. They are inexperienced, impatient, greedy. Or perhaps the southern middlemen are new, sent by an aggressive chieftain who doesn't respect the old ways. The goods are laid out. The coastal group retreats. The southerners approach, examine, and lay down their offer, a paltry one, insultingly so. They retreat. The coastal group emerges. They see the meager offering. Greed curdles into anger. Instead of retreating again to signal rejection, one of them, a hot-headed youth, shouts across the clearing. A curse, a demand. The sound is a violation, a crack in the universe of silence. From the trees, the southerners shout back. A thrown stone arcs through the air. Then, an arrow. The silent clearing erupts into a skirmish of screams and clashing bronze. The trade goods are trampled into the mud. Men die on neutral ground. The amber is scattered, lost, or stolen in the chaos. This is the nightmare scenario. When silence breaks, it breaks into violence. The immediate consequence is the loss of that trading point. It becomes a place of bad luck, of blood memory. No one will use it for generations. The network has to reroute, find a new neutral zone, which takes time and builds distrust. But the deeper consequence is the erosion of the system's foundational principle, that wordless, trustless trust. Once it's proven that violence is an option, the shadow of it lengthens over every subsequent exchange. The waiting periods get longer. The guards multiply. The goods offered become more heavily weighted toward weapons, not as trade items, but as insurance policies carried by both sides. A widely accepted historical fact is that the prehistoric amber trade did not flow uninterrupted. There are clear archaeological hiatuses and shifts in the dominant routes, often coinciding with periods of broader social upheaval, migration, or climate change that destabilize the delicate balance of power between tribes. A collapse of the silent trade in one region didn't kill the commerce, but it forced it to adapt, to find new paths, new partners. It was a resilient network, but not an invulnerable one. The story of the broken clearing becomes a parable. It teaches the necessity of patience, of stoicism in the face of a bad offer. It teaches that the greatest strength is sometimes the strength to walk away without a word, to live to trade another day. The silent trade was never about friendship or alliance. It was about mutual utility. The moment emotion, pride, anger, avarice, entered the equation, the utility vanished. The system was designed to exclude humanity's messier impulses. Its failure was a reminder of why that design was so brilliant and so fragile. Historians still argue whether the practice of silent trade died out because of the rise of more complex political entities with shared languages and enforceable contracts, or because the inherent risk of breakdown eventually outweighed the benefits. Was it made obsolete by civilization, or did its own internal contradictions doom it? In some remote corners of the world, it persisted into the modern era, a fossilized behavior like the amber itself. But along the Baltic, as kingdoms emerged, the rules of engagement were bound to change. The memory of the violence, however, would linger, a whispered caution that even the most perfect system relies on the imperfect humans who operate it, and sometimes, they just can't help but make a noise. Centuries flow like the great rivers that carry the amber south. Your coastal clan, your clearing, your silent protocols, they have faded into the loud soil of history. New powers now dominate the landscape. To the south, the eagle standard of Rome casts a long shadow across Europe. And the Romans, my friend, have a serious luxury goods problem. They don't just want amber, they need it, with the frantic, mass-market desperation of an empire that has made consumerism a civic virtue. Picture the demand. It's not just for the imperial family or a few senators anymore. Every wealthy matron in Pompeii or Herculaneum wants an amber bracelet. Every successful legionary, retiring with his pension, wants an amber amulet for his children. Every up-and-coming merchant wants an amber-inlaid furniture knob to show he's arrived. The Roman market craves amber for jewelry, for amulets. They've fully bought into the medicinal and protective lore, for ornamental carvings, and even for the most bizarre purpose, as a material for handheld erotic objects. The appetite is vulgar, enormous, and insatiable. The silent trade could never have fed this beast. The system needed an upgrade, and it got one, the Via Imperii. The Romans, being Romans, formalized the chaos. They didn't invent the amber road, they paved it, metaphorically and sometimes literally. They established fortified trading posts, emporia, at key river crossings and mountain passes. They imposed the Pax Romana, or at least a version of it, along large stretches of the route, suppressing banditry and making travel safer, for attacks, of course. The trade shifts from a relay of silent, wary middlemen to a more organized, though still perilous, supply chain. Now, large caravans might be commissioned by Roman equestrians, managed by specialized agents, and protected by mercenary guards. The amber moves in bulk, in chests, as a wholesale commodity. The nature of the product changes to suit Roman tastes. The workshops along the route are now factories. They churn out tens of thousands of standardized beads, but also mass-produce carved cameos, intaglios for signet rings, and even small statues of Roman gods or portraits of emperors, all from Baltic amber. A lesser-known, surprising detail is that the Romans were perhaps the first to truly experiment with amber as an artistic medium on a grand scale, valuing its translucency and warmth for portrait busts. They also had some truly wacky beliefs about it. The physician Galen prescribed powdered amber for practically everything, and it was considered a powerful antidote to poison. A Roman dinner party might see guests casually rubbing amber goblets to ward off evil spirits, or wearing amber rings to ensure robust health. This commercial frenzy reaches all the way back to the source. The Baltic coast is no longer the domain of secretive clans, but of powerful Germanic or Baltic tribes who have become sophisticated monopolists. They deal directly with Roman agents, or with Celtic middlemen who act as buffers. The trade is noisy now. There are negotiations, translators, written contracts, on wax tablets, and disputes settled by appealing to regional Roman magistrates. The silence is utterly shattered. But the profit? The profit is better than ever. In return for amber, the north now floods with not just bronze, but with silver coinage, Roman denarii, with fine Roman glassware, with copious amounts of wine, with exquisite pottery, and with weapons of superior Roman steel. The wealth transformation is staggering. A widely accepted historical fact is the establishment of a major Roman trading outpost at Aquileia, at the head of the Adriatic Sea, which became the de facto amber capital of the empire. Here, raw and worked amber from the north arrived to be fashioned into final luxury goods for distribution across the Mediterranean world. The scale is confirmed by the archaeological finds, hoards of amber roughouts, workshops with piles of amber debris, and the sheer volume of amber found in Roman sites from Britain to Syria. Historians still argue whether the Roman demand actually increased the total volume of amber extracted from the Baltic, or simply centralized and intensified the existing trade. Was the coastline now scoured clean by organized work gangs, rather than casually gathered by individuals? The evidence suggests a bit of both. The Romans were nothing if not efficient exploiters of a resource, and their appetite likely pushed the gathering into overdrive. The quiet sunstone of your ancestors was now screaming through the markets of the greatest empire the world had ever known, a tiny, golden symbol of globalized desire. The Roman eagle's wings eventually tire and fold. The legions withdraw, the trading posts crumble, and the Pax Romana becomes a memory. A darkness, or at least a fog, settles over Europe. But commerce is a stubborn weed. It grows in the cracks of empires. And from the north, a new power rises, one born of the sea and as comfortable with silence as your ancestors were. Enter the Vikings. They don't just use the network, they streamline it, turning the amber road into an amber sea lane. Picture their advantage. While overland routes are plagued by shifting tribal territories and crumbling infrastructure, the Viking longship is a sleek, terrifyingly efficient delivery vehicle. They can sail from the Baltic coast directly to trading hubs like Hedeby in Denmark or Birka in Sweden, massive emporia that make the old forest clearings look like pathetic campfires. More astonishingly, they can sail south, down the rivers of Eastern Europe, the Dnieper, the Volga, portaging their ships when necessary, to reach the glittering markets of the Byzantine Empire and the Abbasid Caliphate. The Vikings become the ultimate middlemen, and they do it with a blend of ruthless efficiency and, when it suits them, a familiar, imposing silence. The trade is transformed. Amber is now just one item in a vast portfolio of northern exports: furs, slaves, walrus ivory, falcons. And in return, the Vikings seek silver above all else. Arabic dirhams and Byzantine solidi by the bucketload, melted down for bullion or used as currency in their own burgeoning economies. The amber moves in chests in the hold of a longship, alongside tusks and bundled pelts. At a port like Hedeby, a Viking trader might sell a shipment directly to a Frisian or Saxon merchant, haggling loudly in a pidgin tongue over the price per pound of raw amber. The silence is gone, replaced by the clamor of the medieval marketplace. But the old ways echo. When a Viking trader encounters a strange tribe along a river deep in the forests of what is now Russia, the silent trade might make a temporary, pragmatic comeback. No common language? No problem. Lay out the goods on a riverbank, retreat to the ships, and wait. Some traditions are too useful to die completely. Yet, this is a silence of convenience, not of principle. The Vikings are communicators. Their runestones boast of their journeys, their sagas tell of their deals. They are not in the business of mystery, they are in the business of delivery. A widely accepted historical fact is the discovery of enormous amber stockpiles at Viking Age trading centers. At places like Ribe in Denmark, archaeologists have found workshops where raw Baltic amber was sorted, cooked, to clarify it, and shaped into beads and pendants on an almost industrial scale. The Vikings weren't just moving amber, they were adding value with ruthless, assembler-line pragmatism. They standardized the bead production to such a degree that their distinctive, polished, facete amber beads became a recognizable trade item across the Norse world, from Dublin to Kiev. The spiritual meaning of amber shifts again for these seafarers. It's still magical, of course. They'd appreciate its electrostatic properties as a curiosity of the gods. But in the Norse cosmology, it might be linked to Freya, the goddess of love and beauty, who wore a famous necklace, Brisingamen. Some scholars suggest this necklace might have been imagined as made of amber. For a people navigating by the sun and stars, a stone that held the sun's warmth and light would hold potent symbolic power for safe voyages. Yet, one senses that for the average Viking trader, its primary god was profit. Historians still argue whether the Viking amber trade was a deliberate, organized mercantile enterprise or an opportunistic side effect of their raiding and exploration. Did they set out to trade for amber specifically, or did they simply take whatever was valuable from the Baltic coasts and then figure out how to sell it downriver? The truth, as always with the Vikings, is likely both. They were brilliant opportunists who systematized their opportunism. They saw a network and made it faster, wetter, and far more lucrative, carrying the silent treasure of the Baltic on the singing waves of their ships, toward the mints and mosques of the south. Time's wheel grinds on. The Viking longships rot on forgotten shores, their trade networks fragmenting into the feudalism of the Middle Ages. The amber still flows, but its current is diverted by a new, powerful force, the cross. Christianity is spreading across northern Europe, baptizing kings and converting old gods into saints and demons. And in its wake, amber undergoes its final, profound rebranding. It is about to stop being a pagan sun charm and become a sacred object of Christian devotion. Watch it happen. A bishop, perhaps in the newly Christianized lands of Poland or Prussia, holds a single, large, polished amber bead in his well-manicured hand. He rolls it between his fingers. It is warm. It is beautiful. It captures the light from the stained glass window of his chapel in a soft, golden glow. To his flock, this material is ancient, powerful, and deeply connected to their land. He cannot eradicate its appeal, so he does something smarter: he baptizes it. He declares that its golden hue is reminiscent of the heavenly Jerusalem, its warmth a symbol of God's love, its ability to capture small, flawed creatures a metaphor for God's grace preserving the sinful soul. The pagan tears of the sun become the tears of repentant saints. And then, the practical innovation, the rosary. As private prayer becomes a central Christian practice, a need arises for a device to count prayers. Strings of beads are perfect. Wood is common, bone is better, but amber is divine. It is pleasant to touch, warm, and visually signifies the wealth and piety of the owner. Suddenly, there is a massive, sanctioned, pious demand for amber beads. Tons of them. Every devout noblewoman, every wealthy merchant, every abbot wants an amber rosary. The workshops, now often run by monastic orders or sanctioned by them, hum with activity, producing standardized decades of amber beads for a continent of the faithful. The silent trade's final product is now used to whisper prayers to the Christian God. A lesser-known, slightly amusing historical detail from this era is the rise of the amber room phenomenon, albeit on a smaller scale. While the famous, massive amber room of the 18th century is a later story, medieval reliquaries, containers for holy relics, were often inlaid with amber. A chunk of amber might even be passed off as a relic itself, perhaps claimed to be a piece of the true cross preserved in resin, or a tau of the Virgin Mary, miraculously solidified. The church had become the ultimate luxury brand manager, and amber was its new flagship product. This spiritual shift consolidates control. The Teutonic Knights, a militaristic religious order, conquer the Prussian coastlands, the very heart of the amber country. They don't mess around with silent trade or free markets. They declare an amber regale, a royal monopoly. Now, gathering amber without the order's permission is not just trespassing, it's a sin against God and state, punishable by hanging. They organize amber fishing with nets from boats and employ forced labor to scour the beaches. The last vestiges of the old, communal gathering are stamped out by armored boots. The flow is now a controlled, taxed, sanctified pipeline from the Baltic mud to the cathedral doorstep. A widely accepted historical fact is that the Teutonic Knights' amber monopoly was one of the most brutally effective in history, funding their crusades and castle building for centuries. They turned a natural resource into a theocratic currency, and in doing so, they finally, completely, broke the ancient, decentralized system. Historians still argue whether the Christian appropriation of amber genuinely transformed its cultural meaning for the common people, or simply slapped a holy veneer over a much older, deeper layer of folk belief. Did the farmer praying with his amber rosary feel connected to the bishop's theology, or to the memory of the sun goddess his grandfather whispered about? The bead in his hand held both histories, one layered silently over the other, a palimpsest of belief preserved in golden resin. The world is getting louder. Maps have names on them now: Prussia, Poland, Livonia. The Teutonic Knights' castles are administrative centers, not just fortresses. Decrees are shouted in town squares, tariffs are recorded in ledgers, and contracts are sealed with wax, not silent retreats. Yet, in the deepest, darkest forests of the Baltics, far from the coast now controlled by the order, an echo of the old way persists. It is a ghost, a whisper, a habit so ingrained it outlives the reason for its birth. Picture a remote Sami community in the far north, or a village of old Prussians who have retreated from the Christian advance. They still have pieces of amber, heirlooms from a time when their ancestors walked the coast freely. And they still trade with neighbors who are culturally different, perhaps Finnic tribes from across a vast, frozen lake. The old mistrust, the old lack of a common tongue, remains. So, when a strange sled appears on the horizon, they don't run to get a translator or a notary. They revert to instinct. A small cache of goods, amber, perhaps, but also fairs or superior reindeer antler, is placed on a prominent rock at the edge of the tree line. The villagers retreat into the shadows of the pines and wait. It is a hollow mimicry now. The stakes are low, the quantities trivial. There is no continent-spanning network waiting for this amber. It might be traded for a few iron needles or a pouch of exotic salt. But the form is preserved, like a forgotten prayer whose words have lost their meaning but whose rhythm is still comforting. This is the last echo of the silent trade, a behavioral fossil. The participants likely don't think of it as a special system, it's just the way you deal with those people. They are unaware that they are performing the finale of a ritual that once moved the wealth of empires. Meanwhile, on the coast, the silence is enforced with a new, brutal clarity. The Teutonic Knights Bernsteinmeister, Amber Masters, patrol the beaches. Any unauthorized person found with amber faces draconian penalties. The gathering is industrialized. Serfs work in brigades, combing the shore with rakes and nets. The romance is gone. The individual find, the heartleap of spotting gold in the foam, is now a crime. The only silence here is the silence of subjugation, of a resource thoroughly and mercilessly claimed by the state and the church. The old, mutual, distrustful silence between trading partners has been replaced by the unilateral, oppressive silence of the monopolist. A widely accepted historical fact is that by the late Middle Ages, the amber trade was almost entirely institutionalized, with the state or the church controlling extraction, processing, and sale through a handful of sanctioned guilds in cities like Bruges and Lübeck. The adventurous, perilous, personal journey of the amber bead was over. Its path was now a bureaucratic flowchart. Yet, the material's exotic allure persisted in the popular imagination precisely because it was so controlled. Its scarcity was now legally mandated, which kept its value and mystique artificially high. Historians still argue whether these last, remote echoes of silent trade represent a conscious cultural memory or simply the independent reinvention of a practical solution to a persistent problem, the problem of trading without a shared language. Is it a tradition passed down through countless generations, warped but unbroken, or is it just common sense reappearing in similar circumstances? The answer is probably a melancholic blend of both. The world had moved on, formalized, and codified commerce. But in the deep woods, where the maps faded to blank, human beings sometimes fell back on the oldest, simplest algorithm for exchange. Lay it down, walk away, and let the goods speak for themselves, one final, whispered time. You are back on a beach. Not that primordial one, but a modern Baltic shore, perhaps in Poland, or Lithuania, or on the Kaliningrad coast. The wind still smells of pine and wet stone. The waves still hiss as they retreat. The light is the same bruised muscle gray of dawn. You walk along the high tide line, not in animal skins, but in whatever you wear to sleep. Your eyes, trained by 4,000 years of inherited curiosity, instinctively scan the gravel. And there, among the plastic bottle caps and weathered brick fragments, you see it. A small, water-worn nugget of amber, no bigger than a pea, glowing with that same, captive sunlight. You bend and pick it up. It is warm in your hand. This tiny piece has avoided the medieval dredges, the industrial harvests, the tourist trinket shops. It is a free agent, a piece of the ancient world that has completed its cycle, washing ashore for no one's profit but your own moment of connection. You roll it between your fingers, and in that gesture, you are linked to the Neolithic gatherer, the Bronze Age chief, the Roman matron, the Viking trader, the medieval monk. You are holding a piece of a silence that spanned ages. The landscape around you whispers of the trade. That town a few miles inland? It grew around a medieval amber workshop. That river over there? It was a branch of the Amber Road. The very name of this region in Russian, Yantani, means amber. The past is not gone. It is embedded in the geography, in the language, in the very soil. You can still visit the massive open-pit amber mines where industrial excavators now do the work of storms, tearing tons of blue earth from the ground to sift for the gold. It is a far cry from a silent clearing. The trade is global again, but it is also mundane. Amber is used in jewelry, yes, but also in varnish, in folk medicine, in incense. The magic is commodified, but somehow, in this single, unclaimed piece in your palm, it feels restored. You close your hand around the pebble. This is the end of the journey. The silent trade is extinct, a behavioral relic studied by anthropologists and historians. The complex, wordless dance of trust and distrust has been replaced by digital contracts and global shipping manifests. There are no more forest middlemen waiting in tense silence, only supply chain managers staring at spreadsheets. And yet the essential human impulses remain. The desire for beauty, for connection to the distant and exotic, for profit, for the security that wealth can bring. The silent trade was just one elegant, fragile solution to the eternal problem of getting what you want from someone you don't understand. We've found other solutions, louder ones, but the problem is the same. As you stand there, the first true ray of sun breaks through the low clouds, striking the sea and making it glitter. For a moment, the water looks like it is made of liquid amber. It is easy to imagine a figure from millennia past, on this same shore, seeing that same light on the water, feeling the same cool, smooth weight in their hand, and knowing, without a word being spoken to anyone, that they held something special. The method is gone. The silence is broken. But the golden thread itself, from this coast to the wide world, remains, woven now into the fabric of history itself, a shimmering strand connecting dawn to dawn, hand to hand, across the silent centuries. Now, let that image of the glittering sea soften, let it blur at the edges like a fading dream. The wind you feel is just the gentle sigh of your own room, the sound of the waves nothing more than the quiet hum of distant traffic, or the rustle of leaves outside your window. That piece of amber in your hand is just the memory of a story, a warm, smooth thought to hold on to as the waking world recedes. The frantic journey is over. The tense waits in the forest, the perilous voyages, the clamor of markets, the edicts of knights, all of it settles into the quiet dust of the past. There are no more deals to make tonight, no more silent signals to interpret. The Baltic coast sleeps under its modern lights and ancient stars, its great secret long since given to the world, its golden treasure now just a beautiful stone, a curiosity, a footnote in a history book, and a vessel for tales like this one. So let the weight of those millennia go. Release the traders to their ghosts, the amber to its museums and shorelines, and the silence to the deep, pine-scented forests where it truly belongs. You have traveled far, without moving a muscle. You have traded nothing, but gained a glimpse of a world that functioned on a breath, a gesture, a retreat. That is enough. Let the calm of that final, empty beach seep into your bones. There is nothing more to gather, nothing more to guard. Only the quiet, the dark, and the soft, slow return to your own, much simpler, shore. The story is told. The journey is complete. Let sleep now be the only silent trade you engage in, and may your dreams be as warm and golden as a piece of sun caught in resin, resting at last in the palm of the night.